Welcome back, everyone. Today, after returning from St. Louis, having played in the Chess 9LX Champions Showdown there, I was back at it today playing in a qualifying event for the Fisher Random World Championship, which will be held in Iceland at the end of October. Now, I made it through the initial stage of the Swiss event before, which you guys saw some videos on our channel. Now, we were in the knockout stage. The winner will make it all the way to Iceland, where there is a grand prize of $400,000. So it's a very big event which is coming up. Before we jump into it, let's take a look at the bracket. Now, as we look at this bracket right here, you'll see that there are 8 matches. We had Daniel Naroditsky against Benjamin Bach, Gata Kamsky versus Nikita Meshkov, Andrew Tang versus Andrei Esipenko, Jeffrey Zhang versus Alexander Grishchuk, myself versus Andy Woodward, Frederick Svein versus Awonder Liang, Samuel Sevian versus Gabriel Bick, and Ralph Mamedov versus Kirill Georgiev. So those were the matchups, and my matchup might be a little bit unusual to those of you guys who aren't following American chess very closely. I was paired against the FIDE master Andy Woodward from the United States. Now, this is a name that came to my attention fairly recently. I saw that he had a very massive rating jump. He is all of 12 years old. I think he's one of the top 10 ever for that age range. A phenomenal player, someone who I spoke about in a recent podcast that I recorded along with Fabiano and Christian. So you guys will see a C-squared podcast down the road. But at any rate, we are here to take a look at the games. So without further ado, let's jump into the game. So this is Chess 9LX. So once again, all the pieces are rearranged on the back rank in true Fisher Random style. So C4, C5 is played. Knight F3 is played by Andy. Now I play B5 here, trying to be aggressive. Now, one thing that's very different with this event on Lichess, as opposed to the event that is being played, that was played in St. Louis, I should say, is that in these matches, you don't have time to look at the position at all. The game just starts. You have maybe 1 minute to look at it, and then away you go. Whereas in St. Louis, the players had up to 15 minutes to look at it before the game started. So in this case, time control, 10 minutes plus 2-second increment. You can't, or sorry, 15 minutes plus, I believe, 2-second increment. You can't be too slow at the start. So I play b5, which is already apparently a mistake, which shows just how wonderful I am at the great game of chess. Pawn takes is played. Now I play rook takes b5 here, and Andy decides to castle, get his king out of the center. Play knight to f6, trying to follow the same path and castle here. I'd love to play something like d6 and e5 to take as much of the center as possible here. However, after a move like bishop a4, I have to move the rook, and once white trades on e8 here, there's something like b4 opening up the diagonal. I can still go knight f6, but you have to realize that because I have moved my king, I can no longer castle, so white is probably much better, if not positionally winning already. So let's get back to the game. So I play knight to f6 here, d3 is played, and now I castle. I could have played either d5 or d6. Now the reason I did not play d5 is I felt that after bishop a4, rook b8, let's say he takes and I take, I thought that after knight b3, my pawns here in the center are a little bit loose, very specifically this pawn on c5. If I go bishop b6, rook c1, I'm not sure how exactly I'm defending this pawn here, and it just doesn't feel quite right. So instead here I castle. Now we get pawn to b4 being played by Andy. I take, he takes back with the rook. Now I play d6. Again, having castled, I'm not really ever worried about bishop a4 ideas anymore. So e3 is played here, and now I play e5, trying to take some center here. I could have also played e6, which perhaps is rather positional, pretty dry approach here. Not a whole lot going on, but I wanted to be more aggressive, so I play e5. Now he plays knight to e2, trying to bring the knight to the center. Again, white's bishops are pretty good here. You can maybe go bishop b3, maybe bishop c3 as well, or bishop b4. So I do have to be mindful of that. So after knight e2, I play this move knight d5, which is apparently a mistake. What I should have done is played a5 here, because if white trades and then plays a move like queen b1, I can now go queen a6, and this battery is very strong. It targets the pawn on d3 and or potentially the knight on e2 and the rook on f1. So the computer likes black's position here. Additionally, this is also a very logical move, because after rook c4, I can go rook b7. Same idea of activating the bishop, but also going knight b6 to hit the rook. Whereas in the game, after I play this move knight d5 and rook c4 here, now I have some issues, because when I go rook b8, bishop b5 is not really that strong perhaps, and it's white can also prevent it, which happens in the game because the e4 is played, attacking the knight. I go back, and now he plays a4, and the problem for black here is very simple. My bishops are very passive. If I go bishop b6, there's always some idea like a5, bishop c5, and knight takes e5. So I take the knight, he takes the bishop. So I can't really activate the dark square bishop on this diagonal. Additionally, my bishop on e8 can't go to b5 because the pawn prevents it, and it's a very, very strong move. Now, computer, of course, doesn't really think that it's anything special, but when you're playing 960 against someone who's a young junior player, is improving, and they're showing this sort of understanding, it's really, really inspiring, because it shows that it's not all about the theory, and they're able to come with these concepts even when it's not a regular setup. So after a4, I play f6 here. Knight g3 is played, and I go bishop f7. We get rook c1. Now I play d5, trying to take all the center here, big black center. We get pawn to a5, another very good move as it prevents bishop b6. Also, it creates some space, maybe queen a4, maybe bishop a4 as well. And now white should be completely fine. So I go d4 here. Queen a3 is played with the idea of trying to go bishop b4 and hit the knight on e7. Play queen b7. Knight d2 is played. Now, apparently this is not the best move, but I really did like it at the time because I thought white potentially can play f4. There are also ideas like rook b1 here, and even knight c4 with something like bishop b3 later on makes some sense. So after a bit of a think, I played queen b2 here, which is not a very good move. What I should have done is I should have played knight g6, trying to go for knight f4. Now, I didn't play this in the game, so I was worried about knight f5, and if I play knight f4 here, there isn't an actual threat because white can just go g3, and the queen on a3 is guarding the pawn on d3. However, computer says that after knight e7 here, I probably can make a draw, or maybe even something like knight ce7. But beyond just the knight on f5, I was also worried that there was something like rook b1 here, and it felt a little bit loose, so I didn't play it. So instead I go queen b2, we trade the queens, knight c4 is played, and I go rook b8. Another reason that I was willing to do this as well is I was playing against a junior player, a very young player. Now, one thing that we say in the old world of chess, or the old school chess, is that kids cannot play endgames. So because there is that theme, you figure, okay, it's an endgame, probably they're all tactics, opening preparation, they probably can't play endgame. So it's another reason I went into this. So now we get bishop g4, another very, very good move by Andy. I play knight to g6, bishop d2, and I go knight ce7. And again, he shows very good understanding playing knight d6. At this point, white is a little bit better here, and I have to be very, very careful. On the other hand, however, Andy had used a lot of time by this point, and so he was a little bit low, and that did help me out. I play rook b2 here, attacking the bishop. He takes, I take back, and now white has to be careful because if you move the bishop back, now I get knight f4 hitting the pawn. And if you play something, well, I guess actually bishop b1 is the only move, but potentially this pawn a5 could also be weak. But again, in this situation, it doesn't apply because white has to go bishop b1 or guard the rook. The rook d1 is played, and now I play knight f4 here. And here Andy makes a mistake. He takes the knight on f4. What he could have done here is played rook b1. Now, if he plays rook b1, it seems kind of weird when you look at it, because you figure, well, takes, knight to 3, blacks just up a pawn. But after knight takes d3, the computer shows an amazing line with bishop e2, knight c5, bishop c4 check, king g6. And now after bishop to b4, the two b's are very, very strong here on these diagonals. And black is lacking some coordination here. Additionally, king on g6 is not very well placed. Now, would someone find this in a blitz game? Very, very difficult. But at the end of the day, it does exist. However, Andy here plays bishop takes f4, and now after pawn takes knight e2, I can go bishop a5. And now temporarily I'm up a pawn here, but more importantly, it's a simplified endgame. I really don't have any major weaknesses. So Andy plays knight takes d4, which is sort of the step of going the wrong direction. Probably he should have taken the pawn on f4, but after a move like bishop c3 or even bishop d2 here, black should have enough to save the game. Instead, he takes, and now after bishop b6, now I have a very nice right triangle here. The rook on b2, the bishop on b6. They're targeting the pawn on f2. So knight e2 is played. I go rook d8 here, plays d4. Of course not knight takes f4, because then after bishop takes f2, king h1, bishop e3. It's a classic skewer. I hit the knight on f4 and the rook on c1. So he plays d4, and now I play a5. I don't know if this was the best move. During the game, my young opponent was already fairly low on time, and I thought, I don't want to go for anything concrete. I figure I just start pushing this pawn, and white has to decide what to do, because even though he has a center here, if he can't really push the pawn, because now he can go f5, and he opens up this long diagonal as well. And if he takes, he loses his center, like in the game. So white has a tough decision here, and that's why I played a5. So he plays knight takes f4. Computer likes rook c4, which guards the pawn and prevents a4. But again, limited time, very, very tough move to play. So knight f4 is played. I go rook takes d4, bishop e6, king e8 here. Now he plays knight d3. I go rook e2, and finally my young opponent blunders with rook to e1. Again, one of the reasons that I'm saying that he's a very promising player is even though he was low on time for much of this game, he was finding very, very good moves, and he was not panicking the way that you would expect someone of that age to be panicking against a top player like myself. You would really expect the time and or the gravity of the situation to catch up with him, but he kept it very well under control up until this moment when he finally blunders with rook e1. Sorry, not rook e1, rook b1. Now I play rook takes e4. And apparently knight f4 is actually still okay for white. Very, very hard move to find, because after takes rook here, I guess you have check, and then something like king f1, and maybe it's okay for white, although even this feels kind of hard. But my opponent plays bishop d7 check, I take, and now after rook b6, king e8, I'm up a pawn here. Mr. Andy was down to about, I think, like 10 seconds. So it's just very hard to play. He plays rook a6, rook d4, king f1, not rook takes a5, because then I can take the knight, and after rook takes rook, I have the classic ice skater with rook e1 checkmate, or the back rank checkmate, as chess aficionados would call it. Instead, we get king f1 here, and now in this position, I play rook a2, rook a7, I go king f8, plays g3, I go rook d8. Again, sort of just making quick moves. Finally, blunders with rook e1, and now after knight c6, rook c7, takes, I'm able to create the classic double stack on the second rank. Rook's on the 7th, as we call it in chess terms. Very, very powerful, and the rest is pretty straightforward. We get rook c8, king f7, check, king g6, rook e7, I take, check, I take, takes, king f5, king g1, of course. I'm threatening both ladder checkmates here on a1 and h1, and now I go rook c2, and now the rest is straightforward, because after takes, rook h7, king g4. The problem is the king is cut off on the back rank here, and white can't really do much. The game finishes with rook g7, king f3, g4, I go a4 here, and now he plays rook f7. The only try was rook a7, but after rook c4, I'm going to be capturing the pawn on g4, and with the two split pawns, it should be pretty rudimentary. So he plays rook f7, but now after a3, I don't care about the f6 pawn at all, because the king is cut off on the back rank, so I'm able to push the pawn and go rook b2. Game ends with rook f1, a2, g5, I go check, and now I go rook b2 here. Idea very simple, rook b1. With this king cut off, this is a motif that you should be aware of. In any rook and pawn endgame, if you can get a rook and the pawn on the 7th rank along with the rook next to it, and the king is cut off like this idea of rook b1 will always exist. And after rook g1, king h3, Andy resigns here because I'm threatening mate in 1. If g6, I go checkmate. And if he plays rook f1, I go rook b1 here. Pawn supports the rook. If he takes, it's checkmate, and if he plays rook g1, I can very simply make a queen, and it'll be checkmate next move. So this was the first game against Andy Woodward. I did win this game, obviously, and in the second game, I would win a very up and down game as well to win the match 2-0. So I win my first match against Andy, and we move on to the next match against Awonder Liang. Now, Awonder Liang, another very talented American junior player. He hasn't been as active in the last couple of years. No doubt COVID played a role, but still a very strong player who is over the 2600 rating mark. All right, let's jump into the match. So in the first match, I played a very tough game with the black pieces. I did draw. Best of 2 matches. Again, I'm not sure I specified that, but best of 2 matches. So in the second game, I'm playing with the white pieces against him after drawing the first one. So the game starts g3, g6, bishop g2, c6, c4. Now here Awonder plays bishop g7. In the first game, I actually played knight b6, but after c5, knight a4, d4, b6, takes, knight takes b6, castles. I think I went bishop g7, e3, castles, and I think it was b3. I got a much worse position right away. I was able to salvage it, but it was not promising. So Awonder plays bishop g7, knight c3, and now he plays e6. Very logical move, trying to create the classic big black center here, or a bit of a mini pyramid as well. So now I go e3, we get d5, takes, d4. Now, even though this is 960 chess and the arrangement of pieces is a little bit dank, this is very similar to some other openings. If we go back, actually, I guess I can't do that since it's a 960 board. Let me create a new board just to show you guys something. 1 second. Okay. So let me pull up a new game board just for you guys to see. So the position that I just alluded to in this position, it's very, very similar to another opening which we have, which is you can have various iterations of exchange Slavs, for example, where you get positions like this, or you can also get some of the Grunfeld Slav setups where we get g6, you get something like knight c3, bishop g7. I know the order's wrong, but it doesn't really matter. You get something like this, and at some point you end up in a structure which is very similar to our game, where white tries to go rook c1 and knight e1, knight e3, knight e2, knight b3. A lot of these similar ideas. So even though this position, the arrangement is unusual, because of this pawn structure being symmetrical, it's pretty straightforward in terms of what the idea should be. So I play d4, we get castles. Now I play knight d3, knight c6 is played, and now I decide to castle here. Awonder plays knight d6, I go b3, again trying to develop my dark square bishop. He plays b6, of course, trying to develop his light square bishop, bishop b2, bishop b7, and now I play rook c1. Again, following up on my understanding of the various exchange Slav setups that I'm aware of, you generally try to create pressure on the c file. So I figure rook c1, maybe rook c2 and rook c1, maybe later also bishop f1 to bring the bishop back on this diagonal. So Awonder plays h5 here. I go bishop a3, he plays rook e8, dodging the pin on this diagonal, and now I play h4. Again, I don't know if this was the best move, but at the time I figured black's trying to play h4. I don't really have a good response here, and it feels like maybe I can go rook c2, but I have to worry about h4. I have to worry about maybe some ideas like some sacks as well, so I just have to be a little bit careful, and I wasn't so sure about it, so I thought I'll play h4, stop his h4 idea, and make my young opponent figure out what his next move is going to be, or what his plan is going to be. So get bishop f6, I go rook fd1, queen g7, knight f4 here, knight e7, and now I play bishop f1. Quite simply, in this position, the only bad piece I have is my queen on h1, so I want to bring it into the game. If you look at the h file, I mean, I can go queen h3, but the queen's going nowhere. It's just staring at pawns. So the only way to activate is try to get it to f3 and e2. Also, by playing bishop f1, I can go knight b5 and open up the c file for my rook on c1. So knight ef5 is played. I go knight b5, he plays rook d7, we trade. I go rook c2 here, trying to stack the two rooks on c2 and c1. Rook c8, I play rook c1, takes. Now here I felt that Awonder's move, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but I felt that this was maybe the last time in the game that maybe he could have tried to play some e5 move here to complicate the situation. Now the computer apparently thinks that after queen h3, targeting the rook d8, I guess after takes, I can take and go rook c7, which apparently is winning. I did not actually see this during the game. Now this would be winning because the bishop is trapped, no bishop a6, and at bishop a8 I can go check and collect the bishop on a8. During the game I didn't see this, so maybe I can't be critical of the e5, but I felt like at this moment or somewhere earlier he had to try and break, because after bishop d8, white is just a little bit better with control of the c file. I've got a better bishop on a3. My bishop on f1 also is better than the bishop on b7 as well, so my minor pieces are better placed. So here I play queen f3, knight e4. Now I go queen d1, trying to create another double stack on the c file and infiltrate. So Awonder plays rook c7, and here I play knight h3. Now this was a tough move for me to play during the game for a couple of reasons. First of all, my initial instinct was to play bishop d3, but after rook c2, queen c2, g5, I suddenly realized that if I take, this position is not so clear what my plan is. Black's going to play h4. The king on g1 is not great. I guess I can take and play this, but again, there's no infiltration on the c file. All the squares are covered by the two b's here, so because of that, I wasn't sure what the plan was. Now the computer apparently thinks here I can play the rather insane knight h5, queen g6 and g4, but after f5, the very strange bishop e2 is good. But I didn't even consider this because, again, having drawn the first game and having this pleasant advantage, I felt like, what do I want to do? I want to try and keep it as stable as I can, where I give only myself chances to win and make sure my opponent has none. So I play knight h3, he takes, I take back, and now he plays g5 anyway, which is what I expected. I takes back, and now I take, and I go bishop d6, trying to bring this dark square bishop into the game. I now have b8, the f4 square, as well as say the a3 square if I need it available, and both of my bishops here are better than black's bishop. My light square bishop is much better. This bishop is staring at a pawn. There's no way to get back into the game, and my dark square bishop is much more active than his bishop on d8. So my two b's are better than his two b's. So he plays h4 here. I go bishop f4, queen g7, and now I play bishop d3. He takes, and now I take back with the bishop. Now this was a very tough spot in the game. We were both fairly low on time. Now my initial instinct was take with the pawn, but I thought after bishop g5 I saw queen c7 here, but after takes I wasn't really sure how I'm supposed to be winning after bishop c6, because even though I have a much better light square bishop than his light square bishop, I don't have anything that wins on the spot. My king is maybe a little bit open down the road, so I decided to take with the bishop. Goes f5, and now here I play bishop b5 based on a very thematic idea. My initial instinct was to go king f1, but I thought that here he could play queen d7 with the idea of bishop c6 and bishop b5. So for example, say queen e2, bishop c6. If I go queen h5 here, trying to attack on the light squares, he can now play the amazing queen h7, and I have no entry. g5 would hang the queen, and I also can't go to e8 because the other bishop covers. So the only way to play this would be to bring the queen back, but then I've already wasted some tempi, and black's light square bishop here is very active as well. So the reason that I didn't go for this was that I thought that after king f1, queen d7, his light square bishop is getting active, and if we look at this position conceptually, bishop has no squares to go to. It's staring at a big pawn on d5. There are no other ways to get into the game, so I thought I have to play against the bishop, which is why I played bishop b5, trying to prevent queen d7, and again asking this bishop how it's getting into the game. Additionally, if I have the opportunity, I can maybe go bishop d7 and attack the base of the pawn chain on e6. Computer, like I said, says after king f1, queen d7, apparently queen d1, bishop c6, and a move like a4 is just good for white. Very hard to play because it's sort of there's no clear-cut plan after queen h7 to win the game. So I can't really be critical. I thought what I did makes sense. However, computer says that after bishop h4, king g2 trade, and queen e7, white is still better here. because the bishop is still stuck on b7, but it's not clear what the plan is. So I play king f3, king g7. I just play a couple of waiting moves. Again, both of us were low on time. I go queen c3 here, queen d8. The idea is to go queen c8 and contest the c file. So now I go queen a3, targeting the pawn on a5, queen b8, and now I play bishop to d3. And this is probably the last critical moment of the game, because it looks like black's starting to unwind it here. Now, if my opponent had played bishop c8, I probably would not have won this game. So after queen a4, queen c7, I have to play something like queen e8, queen d7, and queen h5. And after queen e7, I don't really have a clean attack here. I can maybe go g4 eventually to open up more attacking ideas on the king side, but it's very tough to win. Fortunately for me, we're both pretty low on time. Awonder plays king f6 here very quickly, and now after b5, it's very, very hard for black to play, because the problem is I have all these threats on this diagonal towards f8, but the pawn on a7 is also under attack. And now the only way for the bishop to get into the game here, because there's a pawn in the way, you can't go to a6 or c6 because the pawn on b5 will capture, and the only way to get into the game is c8. But here you can't do it, because then queen f8 would just be winning the game. And if you can't go bishop c8, then your bishop is stuck. So Awonder plays king f7. I go bishop e2, plays king f6. Apparently computer thinks that black can go king e8 and king d7 and somehow save the game. Not very human at any rate. He plays king f6. I go queen b4, goes queen d8. I go queen a4, just playing a little bit of a waiting game here. And after king f7, I now go queen c1, queen c8, and I go queen h1, trying to attack on the king side. Now again, computer thinks that after king e7 here, you can just run to d6. King is very safe here on this d6 square, but again, for a human with very limited time on the clock, only seconds, I would say, I think we were both around 10 seconds, very hard to play. So he goes king g7, which is a fatal blunder, because now I get queen h4, and the king is going to have problems on the dark squares and the light squares here, because you cannot contest with queen d8, and I also have bishop h5 as well. So it feels very, very scary, and computer already thinks this is close to loss. So Awonder plays queen e8, play bishop h5. He goes queen f8, not queen takes b5, because then I can go queen g5 check, and probably simplest win would be king f8. I can go check, king g8, and now I have bishop f7 check. If king h7, there's queen g6 and queen g8 mate. And if he goes to h7, actually sorry, if he goes to f8 here, I can now go bishop g6, king g8, queen f7, king h8, queen h7 checkmate. So he goes queen f8. I play queen g5, king h8, and now I play this move bishop g6. Now this is not a bad move, but I was low on time and I thought somehow I was mating, but after bishop c8, much to my horror, I suddenly realized that if I go either check, I guess, check and king f6, bishop h5, he can now go queen g7, and I have to trade the queens because my queen is trapped on h7 because the bishop is in the way. So after bishop g6, bishop c8, I realized suddenly to my horror that no, this is not so easy. So I check, king g7 is played, I play bishop h5, and here he goes queen f6. Probably he should have tried bishop d7 here. I mean, as scary as it looks, because after queen g5, king h8, again, bishop g6 is not winning. I have to play a4, and probably long term I can still find some way to maneuver, but it's not straightforward. Awonder instead plays queen f6, and now I go queen f4, threatening the very nasty queen to c7. Goes queen e7, stopping it. But now I have queen e5 check, king h7, and now I play the very important move a4 here, guarding the pawn. So if he ever plays bishop d7, the pawn is no longer under attack because it's guarded. So Awonder plays queen g7 here. I go queen b8. He goes queen d7, and now I play king f3. And it's still maybe possible for black to fight on after king h6, because now I have to go g4, takes and bishop g4, and perhaps after king g7, you can still fight on, even though it's very hard. Passive queen and bishop, all these weaknesses, open king as well, and the pawns are weak on the other side, but computer still only gives us a small advantage. Awonder, however, here plays queen b7, and this loses on the spot because now I can trade the queens, and after king f4, my king is getting in here on the dark squares, and black is hopeless, in particular because his bishop on c8 or b7 is dead. So Awonder plays king g7. I go king to e5, plays bishop c8, and now I just go king d6, and the bishop is going to get trapped here. If you play a move like king f6, for example, I go king c7, king g5, bishop e2, and as you'll notice, the bishop has no squares. It's just stuck on c8. That's game over. If you play a move like e5 here, there are many ways to win, but the simplest is just to take, and after king f8, you go e6. Idea very simply is to play e7 and e8 queen and end the game. So Awonder here plays king h6. I go bishop to e2, and he resigns in view of this unstoppable king c7 move, which wins the bishop. Again, e5 is the only try, but after pawn takes, king g5, e6, just very straightforward win here for me. So I win the second game against Awonder Liang, and I move into the semifinals of the Lichess qualifier for the 960 World Championship. Here is the bracket as it stands right now, just to show you guys the other scores and what happened. So on one side, you've got Kamsky versus Andrei Yesipenko. They will be playing in the first semifinal. I am on the other half playing the semifinal against Sam Sevian, another junior player from the United States of America. The winners will play in the final, and the winner of the grand finals next weekend will qualify for the 960 World Championship in person, being held in Iceland at the end of October. So it's going to be very exciting. Hopefully I'll do more recaps next weekend when I play in the semis, and fingers crossed the finals. But at any rate, it's great to win a couple of matches, and I hope you guys have enjoyed another 960 recap from me. I do apologize for not doing a final recap from St. Louis, but the event ended very late. There was a dinner, and I had to leave very early the next morning, so that's why I didn't do a final recap, for those of you guys who are wondering. At any rate, if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that subscribe button below, and we'll have more recaps, more chess content, everything coming up in the very near future. Hope you guys enjoyed. Have a great rest of your weekend. See you guys.